Hello, my name is Roshan Narayan, and thank you for joining us on In20. If you're watching us on YouTube,
do that back four and protect and pass the ball very, very simple. He is brilliant. If you put leg.
If you're watching us on Facebook via the Rocket Post, thank you very much. And if you're watching us on YouTube, do hit the subscribe button and don't forget to catch all the highlights and all the talking points courtesy of this man on our Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram account. Danny, thank you so much for joining us yet again. It's not the cold outdoors like last week. It's good to see you in a safe environment, Danny.
Yeah, no, back in the warm this weekend. Obviously, international weekend. Obviously, still in lockdown over in the UK, so it just means we have to watch it on the television as pretty much everybody else in the world does.
And the best part about international weekend is you actually, as someone like me in our line of work, will really do some digging because there's no Premier League action, there's no La Liga, there's no Cristiano, and I found Nicholas Bendtner, who is back at it in the news. He has come out saying that, as a 16-year-old, as a trainee in Arsenal, he went toe-to-toe with Thierry Henry. It just showed you what kind of a character he was as a 16-year-old to go up against one of the best, if not the best striker the Premier League has ever seen. Okay, Alan Shearer as well. But for him to go up against such a talisman, just say something about him when he was a youngster.
Yeah, it does. He also lost. That's just a lot about him as well. But no, I think obviously he's come out and written a book, hasn't he, Nicholas Bendtner, and he's been through obviously his issues with gambling and his addictions and all those sort of struggles as well. And obviously he's coming out and publicised his book, and there will be a bit of sensationalism around it. There may well be one or two stories with false glasses, false nose, and maybe a moustache on, as disguised as the truth from time to time. But never let the truth get in the way of a good story.
That's very true. But he was a story.
Well, exactly, yeah. But I think he's always he's divided opinion, isn't he? Obviously, a player with a lot of ability probably never really fulfilled his potential. And then you can tell by by what happened in his personal life. There were plenty of off the field issues. Not. I suppose they've all been well documented.
He's attacked the taxi driver allegedly, according to his book. He's crashed his car, which he has come out and said had ruined his career, not just in Arsenal, but the entire process as well, the recovery stage and everything like that. He crashed his Aston Martin again, allegedly, in his book.
Yeah, and he openly admits, sort of the gambling addictions that he had, and the amount of money that he would go and lose in a casino, regularly. And again, that sort of that perpetuates itself, and it's a very, very difficult hole to get yourself out of. But I think a player, if you look back on a player with a lot more ability than his accolades deserved.
Would you say that Mario Balotelli, with regardless of whatever he did on and off the pitch, be it in the dressing room with youngsters, as in the BB gun, setting off fireworks in his bathroom, did Mario outdo Nicholas Bendtner in terms of his career?
I think he's a better player. I think he's achieved more, in that space of time. Look what he did at Manchester City and his moves on. He keeps getting big moves. He keeps, there's somebody believes in him. Obviously, he went to Liverpool as well. He's a very, very talented player. I think he's he's more talented than Nicholas Bendtner ever was. And actually, probably some of his antics are probably worse than Nicholas Bendtner as well. He beats him on everything in that. But yeah, again, Mario, sometimes you get players like that, whatever it is, whether it's ego or they've got sort of some issues. But you'll always get a manager that thinks, I will be the one to tame him. I will be the one to turn him into that absolute superstar. And when 4 or 5 real top-class managers have tried and failed, sometimes I think, those other managers have to accept that it's never going to happen.
But would I caught you off guard if the book didn't come out and I told you it was Steve Bruce who helped Nicholas Bendtner with his addiction to gambling, the one that was always on the phone with him, whether he was still playing with him or when he was not playing with him? Would that have surprised you, or is that typical Steve Bruce?
I think Steve Bruce is a really good guy. I wouldn't have known that because obviously that's a personal thing between the two of them. But sometimes managers and coaches they build an affinity. Steve Bruce may well have had some knowledge of what was going on. Don't know what has happened in his sort of personal life, or with close friends and family, and may have an insight into what Nicholas Bendtner was going through. But I think, let's be honest, Steve Bruce is a good guy. Very few people have a bad word to say about him, and he probably felt at that time that maybe he was a confidant, somebody that Nicholas could trust, could believe in, and go to for advice. And sometimes, through adversity, you form those very strong bonds.
Dan, not just during your time, during your time not only with England but in the Premier League as well. There was always stories that predated you, but your set of players that you played around with, we won't mention names. It's very, very well documented that some of the biggest names had an addiction to gambling. I mean, we have spent time together. I've spent time with previous players over here in England.
I think it was. Is it cyclical at the time? When you go back to when I first started playing, you would generally finish training for 12:30, 1 o'clock. You'd go for a bit of lunch, and then what? And often this is when football clubs didn't provide meals for you at the training ground, so you had to go elsewhere. So you've got all this spare time. What do you do from 1 p.m. until the next morning when you have to come into training? There's a lot of dead time, a lot of spare time that you have to do. And of course, your everyday friends that have normal lives and normal jobs are at work. So let's go and have a bet on the horses. Let's go and watch a bit of this. And again, this wasn't the time of Netflix, of Sky TV, and where you can go home and you can watch 7,000 billion channels to your heart's content. So that was all there was really. At that time, it was go maybe have a game of snooker, or maybe go have a little bit of a gamble. And the problem is, a lot of sportsmen they want to win, but the biggest issue is they don't want to lose, and that's the biggest problem with gambling. It gets to the point where the thrill of winning is no longer enough. It's more about I haven't
that
lost.
rush, the rush.
Of course, and it doesn't matter how much it is. It's the ping or whatever it is on the roulette wheel, or the slot machine, or the horses. You've won. The amount starts to become irrelevant, in some cases. But obviously what happens is you lose a lot of money, and then you start to chase it, and you end up in a very downward spiral very, very quickly. But I think, there will still be players that gamble. And of course now it's much, much easier. You can do it at the swipe you can swipe right, swipe left, tap a button, whatever it might be.
Yep.
But I think players now have more going on in their lives. The training is almost sort of 9 till 5 sort of job this day and age. It's a lot more serious. There isn't as much dead time. We have Netflix, and I when I was getting on the bus back in the day, it was a Walkman, where you had to take the tape out and spin it around on your pencil to save your batteries, and those type of things. Life's moved on a little bit from that.
That's fair enough. I mean, you cut me off early on, which is all good, because what I was trying to say is, and this is always shared and confidential, no names will ever be mentioned, but some of the stories I heard, I was shocked, people just taking a wild, just a friendly bet, saying who's going to walk in the door the next. It's crazy. Yeah.
But it becomes, and if it is a little bit about money, it's let's just take it. If you're on £50,000 a week, that's £200,000 a month. There is no point betting £50. It's irrelevant. What's it going to buy you? Walk into Starbucks and spend that, and almost, or tip somebody. But it's irrelevant. You need a buzz. There has to be. Gambling is not about the money; it's about the jeopardy. And it's about the winning and losing. So if you're earning fortunes, the amounts have to get bigger, because there has to be some sort of jeopardy. If not, it's no point. We could walk in. We could sit there and okay, Roshan, next person to walk in the room is wearing a blue T-shirt, and I bet you what's Malaysian?
2 ringgit.
Yeah,
200 ringgit.
I bet you 2 ringgit. What's the point?
Yeah.
It becomes irrelevant. If we say, it's 2 million ringgit, hang on a minute, suddenly there's a bit of jeopardy, and there's a bit of a thrill, and there's an adrenaline rush, and all that starts to come into it. So, it's always relevant to what players are earning and where they're going to get their buzz from.
And I don't want to put you, I don't want to throw you under the bus, which I normally don't do.
Oh, you can, it's fine.
Okay. I don't know how to ask you this, because you're my friend. Did you ever personally see something like that with any of your teammates in any of the dressing rooms you shared?
Oh, always. I remember being at Charlton, and Clive Mendonca would come in with his wash bag full of notes. He'd been betting, let's say it was Cheltenham week, and he'd been, this is before internet phones and before smartphones, and you had to bet with cash. You had to go into a bookies. He would come in, and there would be wads and wads of cash in his wash bag. That's just how it was. Of course, it cost Clive dearly in the end. Gambling became a real problem to him. Players there'd be checks being written, for 20, 30,000 pounds, sometimes. Yeah. Players would be paying other people's debts off because they liked them. Debts would be getting passed around. First time I was ever on a bus, going to Aston Villa in 1993, 94, as an apprentice, going to Norwich and Villa within the Premier League back then. I was the tea boy. I was basically up and down. I was in the squad, but basically I was there to be a dog's body, and do the dishes, make the tea, clean the kit, do all those types of things. And there was one player at the back of the bus who was £2,500 down, and that was cash on the table. I was earning £27 a week at the time. This was more than I earned in a year, and someone had just lost this on the turn of a card. I was almost physically sick. I'm quite probably glad I did in the end, because that probably put me off gambling for life. Because I just thought I'm looking at it. I'm putting teas on the table, and there's my year's wages literally at the turn of a card, and you're just thinking, oh my God, that's just ridiculous.
That is actually quite scary. I have friends as well who's got addictions, but let's not touch about that. Let's talk about another teammate of yours you've shared the dressing room with, Gareth Southgate. I know you're close to him. I know you consider him a friend. I'm not sure if he considers you a friend. That's a bad joke. Don't hurt me. But he's come in for a lot of criticism, Danny. Yeah, okay, during the World Cup in Russia, was all fantastic because he was that ray of hope. Unfortunately, that ray seems to be dying out because the 3-4-3 formation in particular, or whatever it is, they keep saying he's too defensive-minded. He's not using all those attacking players which he has. And you know what it sounds similar to? Your playing days again when they had Lampard, Gerrard, and Scholes.
I think it's different because back then you had good defenders. England don't have very good defenders at the moment, and that's a real problem. So you have to build everything from a solid base. You can't just go all out attack. Liverpool tried that a few seasons back, when they lost, and obviously the Gerrard slip at the end of that, they conceded too many goals. Manchester City last season conceded too many goals. Defence wasn't good enough, therefore you don't win. Newcastle, hugely entertaining back in the day, but couldn't win. You have to have a very, very solid defence. Who is England's best defence at the moment? It's difficult. No, because
Kyle Walker. I mean, he's been labelled an idiot by Roy Keane, but isn't he a decent defender?
He is, but he's not. But then, who do you put him with? There's not an outstanding centre half pairing. Ben Chilwell is better going forward than he is. Even when Trent Alexander-Arnold was fit, he's better going forward than he is a defender. And you're talking about playing against the world's best. This is not talking about playing against Andorra or San Marino, whoever it might be, where you could probably play right back or centre half. You're talking about the world's best.
Yeah.
And you're coming up against, obviously Belgium, later on. And so you've got to sort that out first. Look at what Mourinho has always done. I'm sure Gareth would love Rio Ferdinand and John Terry as a centre-half partnership, Ashley Cole, as left-back. And then you could go and be a bit more expansive. There isn't an out-and-out holding midfield player coming. Declan Rice is starting to come into that, but he's still very, very young. He's still relatively inexperienced. Because of COVID and everything else that's happened, Gareth hasn't really had his strongest team to pick for a while. He did great in the World Cup. He did great in the Nations League. But now, Sterling has missed, the last round of fixtures, or was out a little bit for that. Rashford, Mason Greenwood obviously had to be sent home. So there's been issues every single time. I don't think Gareth has really had his full strength 15 really to pick from yet.
Okay, fine. Say that the team is completely fit. You have all the players you require. You're Gareth Southgate. Who would your starting 11 be, and what would the formation be as well?
I think I would go with, is it 4-3-3 or is it 4-2-3-1? However you want to look at that. I did actually do a bit of research on this for you, Rosh. I'll just put it up on my computer now. I would still just dial it up, wind it up a little bit. I would still go with Jordan Pickford at the moment.
Okay.
Because you're going to play out from the back. You're going to have a lot of possession. in that, and he can set things up.
Or he can break someone's leg.
Well, there is that. I would then go with Kyle Walker at the moment because he's got experience in that position. You have to go with Chilwell at left back because there's no other option. Centre half, it's difficult because you've got to find a pair. I'll come back to centre half.
Okay.
I then went, and then you start to look at who do you play in the midfield area. Is Declan Rice an outstanding candidate? Does he walk into all the teams in the top 6? Does he get into Barcelona? Does he get into wherever? Does he get into Spain, Germany, Italy? I'm not convinced he does quite yet. He's on that pathway. Okay. So I think you've got to go with Jordan Henderson in there. I know he's slightly out of position, but he's disciplined. He's got the experience to play that holding role. He can be the leader. He can be that linchpin, and he can direct everything in and around that. 2 midfielders maybe just in front of him. Again, I think that's difficult. I think up front is not so much of an issue at the moment. I think you go Sterling, Kane. Those two are definitely going to be in there. Then you look at who is on form. Could be Sancho, could be Greenwood. You've got lots of options. Could be Rashford. In those situations, there's a lot of young talent. And then it depends who you go within that midfield area. People got about Grealish. Is he disciplined enough against the very, very best to play that position and be a midfielder? I'm not talking about being an attacking midfielder with a free role and can go where you want. Yeah. I'm not sure he is at the moment. So I think, Mason Mount, he gets a lot of criticism, but I think Mount has been fantastic. He rarely has a bad game in those situations. He's got experience. Okay. So I think this is the problem, because there is no... Normally you look at an international team and probably 9 players out of the 11 pick themselves. They don't in this situation. So, you're always having to juggle the pack, look at who's in form, who fits in with who. When I played, 9 players picked themselves automatically, maybe 10, simple as that. There was, because they were fantastic players and they were always in good form. That isn't the case with this crop of young England players.
Wow, that's actually quite, I wouldn't say shocking, because I think when you talk about England in this day and age, there's so much media hype about the likes of Sancho, which is deservedly so. You have your Mason Greenwood, your Rashford, you've got Harry Kane. It's like me, top body, heavy legs. It's just like, it's skinny. I do work out on my legs. Okay, that's a bad reference, but is that worrying for England? You can't pick 2 centre backs. I mean, Gomez is injured right now.
I think it is, because when you look back over the course of time, England have always been very, very strong defensively. I've had fantastic players. I go back to my day. It was Rio and Sol Campbell. The backup to that at the time on the bench was Martin Keown and Gareth Southgate. then coming through, you had John Terry, Jamie Carragher, Jonathan Woodgate, Ledley King. The list goes on. Matt Upson, was coming into that at that time as well. You're talking in an era of a 6-7 year period. You've got some top class centre halves in there. Obviously, Gary Neville was at right back, and then you had Glenn Johnson coming in after that. You had Ashley Cole at left back. These players picked themselves, without a shadow of a doubt.
Don't forget about good old Phil Neville.
Of course, play everywhere. Let's leave Phil. I wouldn't pick Phil. Gary is actually a better player, or more experienced. Gary was a better player. Did better. But that's what I'm saying. But you're talking about Phil Neville, Carragher couldn't really get in the England squad, and these were stars at their clubs. They would never let anybody down. England don't have that luxury. We've got a lot of potential still at England. It's still a very, very young squad. Average side to win a World Cup, 27, I think it is. Something like that. England's average age at the moment is generally about 24. So these players have got 3 or 4 years yet of still maturing.
All right, Danny, that's been brilliant. We've run out of time. It is 20 minutes. Stay safe, you and your family and all your friends and everyone across the UK, in this COVID situation. It's been a pleasure, my friend. I'll talk to you next week. All right, do catch all the highlights on our Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook page as mentioned. Until the next time, stay safe and be happy.